All right, folks, we're going to jump in and get started. First off, Happy New Year to everybody for joining us. This is our first webinar Wednesdays of 2021. Welcome. I'm excited. We got a great kickoff topic for the new year. We're going to be talking about Microsoft and WVD. And I got my buddy Rob Shaw on today, and we just talked over about a year ago. So I kind of made the theme about what a difference a year can make. So welcome, Rob. Please, if you can give the audience a little introduction on yourself. You're the global black belt. So, that's a pretty hefty title,
Know nothing about martial arts, but that is the topic, and kind of at the goal of for Microsoft GVBs, we are kind of experts in particular technologies. Well, I would say Microsoft calls them experts. I wouldn't necessarily call myself that, but that my focus is basically VDI and helping customers bring VDI to Azure, whether that's native WVD or with Citrix or VMware or what else. But happy to be here. And Pete, always a pleasure to see you.
Awesome. Yeah. And for those who don't know me, my name is Pete Downing. I'm the host of today's webinar. Also to my side, I got Megan Hansen joining us. I always give a shout out just because, she's the one who helps me make sure you guys get fed. So give it a little hello, Megan. And just remember, be nice. If we got to verify information, we're doing it for a reason. So welcome. And Megan's actually taken on a bigger role in my organization this year. So I'm excited to grow the organization. So as always, we encourage question and answer. So as you probably noticed, we're using a new platform this year. I'm on Zoom, and one of the cool things we can do is you can add questions, and I allow anonymous questions. So if you don't want to know, people to know who's asking it, no worries. But also other attendees can upvote and comment on the question. So pretty cool feature. I'm excited about that. So yeah, we switched the platforms this year. And again, questions are encouraged. As far as the agenda goes, simple agenda. We try to focus on the topic of the day. I always throw in some polls because I love to get the audience involved. And we will continue to have a little fun this year. And we may tweak it as we go through the year. We'll see. I got surveys coming out after every session. And based on your feedback, we may turn the dials and tweak and turn knobs and maybe change the time or whatever. So your feedback is very valuable. Webinars.XenTegra.com. Check out the listing. We got a lot of great vendors coming up. Parallel to that, I introduced a new series on Thursdays. Every other Thursday, I'm going to call it Bits and Bytes with XenTegra. And it's going to be more industry focused, like topics that are broader than just one vendor. My first one of the year is Nutanix and Citrix. So check that out later this month. Parallel to that, events.XenTegra.com. If you didn't know, there's a free ADC training workshop tomorrow. So Citrix ADC, you get some hands-on labs. There are still some seats available, but check that out. And we have a lot of great events. I'm actually doing my Azure Fundamentals class next week. A lot of you asked me to bring that back, and I did. So I'm excited to be doing that. Podcast.XenTegra.com. We do a lot of great podcasts. One of the podcasts we do every month is WVD Monthly. Andy and I, our founder and CEO, we talk about WVD and where it's been and some of the changes that have been made. So I'll be recording that next week with Andy. And we also have a couple other great podcasts up there as well. One of the other changes you probably noticed is instead of doing Grubhub this year, we're going to be doing Uber Eats. So yes, we are giving away Uber Eats gift cards, or actually I should call them vouchers. So a little easier, and will tie nicely into your Uber Eats account. And we did change kind of the way you get those vouchers, and we're going to extend how long you get those vouchers so you can kind of put them all together and pool the money, so to speak. So, we looked across the data last year, and, I fed a lot of people last year. I'll just say that. So, but excited to be doing that. And then we're going to keep the theme of monthly giveaways. I'm going to stick with everybody wants a new phone. So, one lucky person if you attend all the different events this month. And you don't have to attend them all. Just if you attend them, you'll be put in the pot for a drawing for an iPhone and or Samsung. And I get some other cool swag I'll dole out to a few lucky folks in the audience as we go through the month. We're going to talk about this later, but bronco.XenTegra.com, you're definitely going to want to check that out. As I was sitting here before the session, I'm like, I might have to tie WVD into this giveaway a little bit. So I got to think on that. But I might have something coming up on that to get you guys to try WVD. And we're going to talk a little bit later on the ways you can try WVD. All right, let's have a little fun. Now, polling this year is going to be a little different. So, the Zoom platform actually allows me to bundle polls together. So I'm gonna have a little fun with this and see how it goes. And I may tweak it next week, but we'll see. So the first thing is just some fun polls to get you guys involved. This is my first XenTegra webinar Wednesdays, and I am in just a roundabout what your role is. And this just helps Rob and I understand, who's in the audience. But I'm also curious. I want to start tracking if you're new or not. And if you're not new, welcome back. You know the drill. And if you are new, hopefully we're entertaining and you find this topic interesting. So I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to answer this. I like to get at least 50% or more, just so I have some good statistically relevant data. And again, anything on the screen is anonymous, so no one can see your information and no other attendee can know that you're voting on X or Y. So, all right, we're going to need a couple more seconds. Going once. Twice.
And Pete, let me say yes for the third question. Yes, I would like to be in the drawing for the Bronco.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to share the results so you guys can see them. But we got a lot of new folks in the room, so thank you for joining us. And we do this every Wednesday. Tell all your friends. And we try to keep the topic entertaining. We got a lot of folks a spread of folks in the room today. So we try to cater to all different types and keep it as technical and as interesting as possible. All right, next I want to talk about kind of some fun industry information. I'm going to launch this, and there's a few questions. I'll go through the questions as you guys are doing. So the first thing is around Azure AD. How are you set up? Are you doing a cloud only or are you doing hybrid? The next one is around your infrastructure as a service. Are you using Azure or using AWS? And again, these just help Rob and I understand our audience. O365 or M365. How are you set up? Are you doing Exchange on-prem, hybrid scenario? Exchange online, you're kind of in the bucket of, hey, you're considering it. It's not even on your radar, or hey, you're a Google Chrome enterprise shop. Don't worry, we won't tell Microsoft. And then, do you have a remote worker strategy for your future? And, what's your thin device strategy look like? And this just helps us understand where you guys sit. And I thought I had my question in here around WVD, but maybe it's in my other one. So we'll make sure I didn't forget to put that in, but maybe we'll ask that in the middle. I'll type it up while we're presenting. All right, we'll get a couple more seconds while you guys answer these polls. Again, this just helps us. I love the way they do this because it helps you guys. You can answer them really quickly. And as I read through them, it's fun. But a lot of cool data here that we'll capture, and we can refer to this as we go through the session today. All right, so a couple more seconds. Going once, going twice, and last call. All right, so we're going to share the results. So a lot of folks doing hybrid, which is good, especially if you're doing WVD. I'd love to get a future topic, Rob, on some of the context-based access that you guys are doing, and around the security stack, because there's a lot of cool stuff that Microsoft's doing there. Great, a lot of Azure folks in the room. Interesting spread below that. Hybrid is a big one and tends to be a big one. Now, I'm going to say this. If you don't know what fast track is, please reach out. We can educate you on the value of fast track. Your remote work seems to be the theme still going into 2021. Please, hopefully this year will be a little different than last year. We can only hope, right? But remote work is a big, big piece of strategy now when we look across the enterprise. And then I always ask about thin devices, because I live by the mantra of, if you're going to do a cloud scenario, you have to have a good endpoint. So just curious to see what the end strategy is. All right, one final round of polls, because this does play a little bit into what we're going to talk about today. But curious around your EUC investment, and are you in which EUC product are you using today? So pick your primary, because you might be using more than one. Which hypervisor platform are you using today? And then finally, are you using Citrix Cloud and or Workspace? And we'll kind of come back to this later on in the session today. I'll have a little discussion around where does Citrix and VMware sit in the stack of WVD. And Rob and I have a lot of great insight into that. So as you guys finish wrapping up these answers, I'm excited. So Rob, you having a good New Year so far?
Hey, living the dream, always, right? In this time of COVID. Hey, one thing about these polls that I always like, obviously as a panelist, it's cool to see where everybody's coming from, but as an attendee, I love seeing these as well, where I get to see what my peers are doing. So if I'm a Citrix shop, it's good to see. Hey, there's plenty of company, as is the case here. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's great. So EUC, it's Citrix always tends to be at the top of the pile. And, VMware and RDS kind of go back and forth. Maybe WVD will get there. And it's kind of, if we have time, I have an interesting topic that came up on my conversation with Brian Madden last month. But ESXi, VMware is obviously top of the heap when it comes to the hypervisor. But this little guy right here, Nutanix, is making a big push. And it's going to be interesting to see what Nutanix does over the next year to 2 years. And then finally, Citrix has cloud and Citrix Cloud Workspace. And how does that tie into WVD? We'll talk about that a little later. So, all right. So, folks, thanks for having fun with us and taking some of the polls. And as always, I ask polls on every session just to keep it fun and keep it interesting. And, I might even get creative one day and we'll do polls throughout the whole session. So we'll see. We'll have a little fun as we evolve into the year. If you're not following, XenTegra, myself, Rob, Microsoft on social media, please do. Another gentleman I'll call out, and Rob, I think you'll agree, Christian Brinkhoff, like he is a great resource in the industry around WVD. So shout out to Christian. Maybe I'll get him on here one day. I don't know if you can get you have any poll, Rob, but we'll see. But Christian's a great resource in the industry. All right, Rob. So we're gonna talk about Microsoft and WVD. And so I'm going to tee it up with a simple question. So what are the biggest changes that have occurred in the year? And I'm going to stop my share and allow you to share now. And you're going to talk about some of the stuff that has happened over the last, I'll say quarter, but you'll talk about some of the stuff over the last year since you and I talked. And I'm going to say something. You guys delivered, and I'm impressed. I got to say, I'm impressed that Microsoft came through with what they said they were going to do in the last year. And a lot of the stuff you and I talked about, it was probably just over a year ago, has come to fruition. So.
Yeah, I think, as everybody would probably expect, one of our biggest things over the past year, the product is now, gosh, I guess a year and about 3 months old, right? So we're still neophytes, kind of in the space.
Yep.
But, I think, as we kind of went down the path, we, like everybody, got hit with COVID, right? And, the questions from customers were things like, sorry, I'm trying to kind of swing through here at the same time and kind of tee up this. And am I sharing that yet?
Not yet. Nope. You're going to share.
Yeah. Let me get that out there.
Rob works for Microsoft, so we can't be too hard on him on the Zoom side of the house because I'm sure they use another product that's well known. So
yeah, I used to use Zoom a good bit, and it's funny. I've had this computer for a little while, and I didn't even have the Zoom client on until today. So let's see here. Hopefully we can get that back up there. Hello. I have no excuse for not being able to use PowerPoint, however.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think kind of carry off where we started, which was we got into COVID, and conversations with customers went like this. Big financial company, we jump on a call with them, and the question is, great, we need 75,000 desktops by Tuesday, and this is Thursday. It's like, okay, let's regroup and let's see, how can we get you desktops, right? How, can we jump box in? Can we, you don't have enough VPN licenses. So we ran into a lot of those complicated questions with customers, and, we, looked at all the solutions that the customers may have. They may have access to VMware, they may have access to Citrix or native RDS on-prem. being able to do that jump box. So really, we kind of jumped into that. So I think the product group kind of got hit with that as well, where we had an agenda of where we wanted to go as a product group, yet we had to pivot in response to what everybody wanted, right? And what we found was we had a trajectory that looked something like this for the growth pattern for WVD, and it about whatever February March timeframe, it kind of went bam, and we started running into thresholds. We started running into things that we hadn't seen just because there was such a rush, right? When you get a large state saying, hey, we need 220,000 desktops like tomorrow, right? Or the federal government needing those. So it changed. So a lot of what we've done in the last year, since we talked last, Pete, well, as a group, is that we started doing more compatibility, more thresholds, being able to hit scale. We had a lot of questions about our resiliency, and so making sure that we're resilient in the event that things happen, with more and more of this workforce working from home. Yet this is kind of where we are, well, really as of maybe last month, right? Some things that we talked about that were coming, we shift from being kind of PowerShell and ARM to an ARM model where we're more graphic, right? And when we run VDI environments as administrators, we really want a console. So we've fully deployed the ARM-based provider for WVD. That includes things like role-based access control. So administratively, we don't have these separate WVD roles separate from the Azure roles that you're already familiar with. And based on the poll, we saw a lot of folks that are using Azure today. We're starting to bring monitor integration into today. It's really still being able to leverage Azure Monitor and some of the Azure tools and be able to set those metrics. That's still a little bit manual. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. All our service metadata has always been stored geographically based in the US. Now that's starting. We're already in the EU, and we've got further rollouts that are coming. I think a big one that finally did hit is that we could do app group assignments by groups instead of by users. That's critical, right? So being able to do those assignments, as groups. As of this year, the beginning of this year, the new year, 2021, some things that we've already launched. So some of these are either public preview or they're in general availability. Public preview for us means you're welcome to test them and run them. It's not necessarily recommended for production environments with limited support, but usually for WVD, a public preview usually goes to GA within a month, unless there's specific things that they decide they want to bring back into the tool from a PG perspective. So kind of lots of other things that reliability, resilience, and compliance that have come into the tool, since the beginning of this year. The VM scaling tool pretty much went live now, and that's still a little bit. It's not quite where we want to get to from a scaling tool, but certainly it's a step towards that. Being able to do mem management, or formerly known as Intune, the direction is to kind of move in that direction, so that you can leverage, as always, System Center, but then you could also leverage Intune to be able to do some of those managements. Today, it's capable for personal VMs, as you know, or maybe don't know. We can talk about, should you want to know that further, we can go deeper. That a personal VM for us is really kind of statically assigned to a user. Formerly, you might think of that as a persistent VM. So today you can do that with Intune, be able to manage those WVD personal VMs, with multi-user session-based things coming more in the future. We released a screen capture protection, so you can't do a kind of a screen snap. So increasing that security. And then the last two, I think, are kind of highlight ones. MSIX App Attach went public preview, which is huge. We've been working on that a long time. It really went through some delays so that we could really give management from the ARM, so that you didn't have to do that from scripts and only from APIs. And then finally, another big ask is being able to do some UDP, direct connect. As you know, we have the reverse connect. This kind of goes around the reverse connect so that you can do UDP for things like audio video enhancements and some multimedia redirection. So really that's kind of that first phase of being able to do, well, really first phase was some of the Teams enhancements, and then UDP direct connect.
Yeah. So I'll throw a question out there and hopefully get the audience a little warmed up here. So let's talk about VM scaling, right? So in prior to this, and I don't know if you're able to show even if you have a UI handy, but you had to use runbooks and the Logic app, right? And so is that go away with this new functionality?
It kind of comes into the fold from a capability from the console, so it's a little faster today. I can pick what I want to do today. By default, you can set it on schedule thresholds, and you can set it on user densities on session hosts before it goes and spins up other VMs. Some new things, something that we just really dropped in is that if I do a personally assigned VM, I can have those say shut off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever, or lack of use. And then when a user reconnects, that it automatically spins that back up. So that could be huge from a unfortunate. Well, I think most folks are trying to get to a pooled, non-persistent state for their VDI environments. Yet there's still a lot of people that have to leverage persistence. So that personal VM, being able to auto start that is key.
So like, let me ask another question. Well, since we're here, so it looks like Microsoft is building a lot of cool functionality into the ARM platform. So if I'm a partner, let's say like Nerdio, where would you still fit those guys into the fold? Like what's
it's funny because we kind of say, oh, well, this was a space that Nerdio fulfilled, or NetApp, formerly CloudJumper, fulfilled, and the assumption was, well, you don't need those tools, but yet what we're finding is some of our tools are still not hitting the mark with what customers are looking for. For some people, it might be enough, the native pieces, but being able to, for example, I think like Nerdio could say, hey, I can run this stuff and it'll tell me what my projected changes, if I make these, what these projected costs are going to be in Azure. So I think, specifically related to like the VM scaling tool and the monitoring, for example, I think there's still a tremendous amount of value that these other tools provide on top of native WVD.
All right, cool. And then I guess an underlying theme there that I'm seeing here is you guys are filling in a lot of the gaps that, I guess the remote desktop client has with some of their, I'll say competitors, AKA partners in the space. And so it's good to see that it's getting a little bit more robust.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's based on customer feedback on what folks are telling us that they really would like to see. We hear time and again scaling, because you want to be able to reduce your consumption. Especially what we see a lot of folks that are first to go to Azure, we see that they're bringing their burst workloads, right? Acquisition, seasonal workers, work from home has been huge. So being able to take those burst workloads that, hey, while we're needing to burst, it's key, right? We don't have the infrastructure, or we can't build for this fast enough. So the ability to be able to shut those resources off when they're not being utilized. That's where I really love tools like like Liquidware and Lakeside, where they can kind of monitor and show, hey, I'm gonna take an assessment about what I'm about to deploy, so that I know, wow, while we have, at times, 5,000 concurrent users, we're finding that really only 30% of the workers are really there, and there's a lot of disconnected sessions. So those are key metrics to really be able to ferret out ahead of doing some of these deployments.
Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about what we can look forward to in 2021 and things that are on the roadmap, but not necessarily confirmed or committed. Right? As if we're talking about future items, I as an ex-product manager, I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and these are really things that the PG kind of we get to hear the things that they're working on, yet we really only get visibility into what's going to happen within the next 6 months, right? And that's what we're looking at here. I think the first one, we've had a decent number of folks that have been anxious for being able to migrate the non-ARM, the earlier deployments of WVD to the ARM-based WVD capability that is Azure Resource Manager based. So that tool is due out for that. Many who've already needed to go. There were other tools from some of our partners that were available. So, I'm not sure, how many people are left out there. I've seen a lot of folks that have just built up new environments rather than migrating, some of their old ones. But there are still some out there. That VM scaling tool, being able to do both pooled, personal, and hibernation, right? So that's a key word in that sentence, is something that we've really lacked in WVD. And for anybody who's really concerned about Hibernate, know that there's a Hibernate SKU that can bring your cost way down, because we haven't had hibernation. But at this point, we'll be able to do scaling that can incorporate hibernation. So we could say automatically, hibernate machines that are disconnected and that kind of thing, or sessions, away from things that they're working at. WVD monitoring, and it's at this point that I think goes back to your question that you asked, Pete. When can we expect to see WVD kind of pre-built with metrics that are the ones that we recommend, and the based on the feedback that we've gotten from customers, that we'd like to report on, right? What processes are taking CPU? What processes take a long time? What are our login experiences look like, right? Having those metrics pre-built into the resource manager, so that you quickly can see the value. Just add the VMs that you want to monitor, and you're good to go, right? And I think that's going to be key. Session shadowing from the portal, again, something that from a VDI standpoint, a session host standpoint, folks, they want to be able to remote connect a user session or jump in to make some modifications, right? I think that's key. So we expect to see that out soon. This next one, Azure Active Directory domain join. Today, WVD is a hybrid domain join, meaning I have to both, for authentication happens with Azure Active Directory, but the VMs and the profiles are all, and a lot of files and shares and things are all based on traditional Active Directory, right? So you have to find a methodology to move your on-prem environment and replicate it up to Azure, right? And you do that with AD Connect or different tools, or ADFS. But in this case, being able to have the VMs be Azure Active Directory domain join, and even for FS Logics and the profile, being able to leverage that as well, right? Today we're doing that with traditional AD. This way, it could reduce some of the importance for connecting back to on-prem, right? It might reduce the need or reliance on an express route, or very beefy connection back to on-prem resources. It's going to simplify a lot of other things down the road as well. So Azure Active Directory domain join is a huge one. This is showing MSI app attached public preview. This should say general availability because we're already in public preview. And for those of you who don't know, that's the ability to take an application that's MSIX based, which is somewhat like AppV with some changes that we won't go through right now, and install that into a virtual drive. And that virtual drive attaches to the session on login for the users, right? So I could have a very simple VM, whether those are personal VMs or whether those are pooled VMs, doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if it's multi-user either. So it really simplifies app deployment. And then finally, UDP for that, kind of, especially for VoIP solutions, folks that are trying to run a WVD for call centers. The folks that have gone to call centers today, most of them are keeping their VoIP client or their TAPI connections outside of the session itself and run it off the physical machine. So, being able to, at this point, to redirect that audio connection to be direct. It also doesn't do the acknowledgement. So it's a much more, I don't know that I'd say it's a more efficient protocol. It's that, hey, whatever happened a second ago doesn't matter. I just, if I'm streaming audio, I need to see, what's next in line.
Nice. All right. So great question came in, and I got a question too. So disconnect session monitors, i.e. timer expires, logs of the session. If last session on a single/multi-session shutdown, does it shut down the machine is I think what they're asking. So kind of back to the feature you guys just launched, is there able to, track session disconnects and is part of the whole scaling methodology, I guess you could say.
Yeah, today we really key off that metric a lot, right? Being able to take idle sessions and log them out. And today that's really our option, right? I take idle sessions, log them out. I can set a VM on a multi-user to be in maintenance mode, meaning it's not going to take any new connections, and it can take some aggressive actions like, hey, we're going to log everybody off in 5 minutes, save your work, that kind of thing. So today we're doing those things. Where I think that'll become more useful is that, especially on those personal VMs, that if they become disconnected, being able to auto hibernate VMs so that it can really save consumption costs for customers. So yeah, I think I'm betting on the future, but I think that the PG is going to see that as a critical metric, in the hibernation capabilities.
Cool. So another interesting conversation came up, or question came up, and I'm gonna pause it for right now because I have another question you and I are going to talk about in a minute. But I got a question around Azure Stack. So like you look at the hybrid story. Are you seeing a lot of the hybrid solution out there? So if you go and talk to customers, are you see any customers using Azure Stack? And then parallel to that, are there any partners that are looking to work with you tighter around like an Azure Stack? So for example, like a Nutanix, right? Because you guys have a very strict, HCL right now, and it's a great concept, but how much traction is that getting? Because I know WVD is supported with Azure Stack. So that essentially, for the audience, that brings Azure on-premise, quote unquote, hybrid cloud, and then brings the workloads closer to the we'll call it edge compute, right?
Yeah, I know that from an Azure Stack perspective, there are a lot of things, driving forward with Azure Stack. Relative to WVD, it's one of those things that kind of pulled back because it wasn't as important during work from home strategies, right? It all of a sudden became, hey, that's not that important today. Now that said, we hear it from Fed. They'd like to see that. They'd like to see dedicated, infrastructure. Fed does like the idea of Azure Stack, being able to, run those things in different locations or in air gap locations, that kind of thing. Where that, I think that's going to get picked up again for WVD, but as I understand it, it was kind of pulled back during COVID. I believe it's interesting what you mentioned about Nutanix and Nutanix come together with Azure Stack. That's interesting. I'd never thought about that. I can mention, this is not really Azure Stack related, but something that when I saw the hypervisor poll that you did a moment ago, something that's interesting that a lot of people may not know is that you can, kind of shift your ESX host to Azure with a solution called AVS, Azure VMware Solutions, or Azure VMware Services. I'm not sure which acronym it goes for, but basically it's the idea that your next hypervisor that is running, ESX host in Azure. So that is a capability, to do. And previously it was not optimized for VDI, and that has changed recently. So now, VDI being able to run, say, VMware Horizon, in Azure could be a capability via AVS, or you can do the Azure VMware Horizon as well. So not to focus on the specific vendor that way, but from a hypervisor standpoint, it is unique for us that way.
Cool. Yeah. So interesting question came in. And I'm curious to get your answer because I don't know, to be frank with you. And I think the answer is yes, but I want to get it from the Microsoft source. So are MSIX app attach only, or is it only available on WVD, or could they use it on-prem with local laptops and desktops to have one application package that would rule the world, to use the term that the gentleman asked? So
yeah, I think MSIX is definitely available to be used in Azure or on-prem. You'll be able to use MSIX a lot of different places. App attach, at least to begin with, is going to start out as a WVD capability first, right?
Yep.
You'll be able to leverage that with Citrix and VMware, and in fact, even Nerdio has some built-in management console to help you build those start to say vDisks. Sorry. To build those virtual disks that you're going to attach. So, at least in the beginning, it'll be that way. But, I'm not sure, if, that'll be available in an on-prem environment. But kind of when I think about it, since it kind of stemmed out of the FS Logix environment where you could do app containers, so you had app masking, but then you could actually install those into containers. You can do that today. So, I'm guessing that's probably going to happen. It's just that the VMs, the OS may not already have the hooks in it that we already have there.
Yeah, and there's a great partner in the ecosystem that not only enables MSIX, but can enable the scenario that this gentleman's asking is Liquid. Liquid's a great ecosystem partner. So if the viewers, I did a great webinar with them last year. I'm trying to get them on this year, but if you don't, it's Liquid. So it's LIQUIT. And it's a great product out there that's enabling WVD. All right. So another question that came in, and it's a good one, is what process does WVD have in place to handle hung sessions in the case that a session was improperly ended? And so this is a common scenario, not even in WVD, but across any session-based compute, right? So curious to see if you have an answer. And if you don't, we can always come back to with that at a later time. But I'm curious if you have an answer for that.
I think I don't know if I have the comprehensive answer, but I have a partial answer, I guess. I think hung sessions generally, they really only affect non-persistent, pooled, and even multi-user environments, first of all. So that's really where the plague is, because a lot of times the profile lives inside the persistent VM. So you don't usually run into it as much persistent. So focusing on the other side, it's how do I make a non-persistent environment more persistent? And in the past, that's always been redirected profile, right? Or roaming profile, whether I'm using Citrix UPM, whether I'm using DEM, whether I'm using Ivanti or Res in the past, whatever, right? Profile Unity, or, maybe others that are out there, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And I've even seen customers that have made their own, and some of them are pretty slick. FS Logic's that capability, something that helps to alleviate that is that roaming profiles typically queue information to be written at log off. And if the session gets, has a problem where the user was disconnected and the VM gets rebooted, that state becomes corrupt, right? The profile is then, it can't commit them. So when they go to log in, they get a temporary profile, right? We've seen that a million times. How do you fix it? Delete the profile, log in, and away you go. With FS Logics, those commits are going to happen as they happen because Windows thinks it's writing it locally as if it was a local profile. There's no queuing information. So it's highly less likely, and according to the development group, they've never been able to recreate that corrupted session using VHD location as your method. So I think generally, and that applies whether you're doing on-prem or whether you're running it in WVD, because FS Logics is available for you to run on-prem as well.
Cool. All right. So, great questions to the audience. Here, I'm going to steal screen share really quick, Rob. So if there's any more questions, please ask. Great questions. Someone took advantage of the upvoting and giving a comment. So I'm saving your question, by the way, for something we're going to talk about in a second. But before we dive into the juicy topic, Rob, let's talk about, are there any programs that our friends on today's webinar should be aware of? So, again, what I'm alluding to is, are there ways to evaluate WVD without impacting your pocketbook?
Yeah, that's great. And usually, like the group that I'm a part of, the GVB group, if we're conversing with a customer, we're usually understanding where you're coming from. Are you doing any type of VDI or session host type work today? Whether that's, if it turns out that that's Citrix or it's VMware or it's native, great. We can understand that. All of these programs will apply whether you're doing it native WVD or whether you want to come to Azure with Citrix or VMware, or even one of our other vendors like, as mentioned before, like Nerdio and NetApp. So some of those programs are there to help make your journey to Azure easier, right? Some of them, with vouchers to help offset the cost of running a pilot in Azure. So the actual Azure consumption costs can be waived, or credits can be given for that. Other things can be, we can work with either Fast Track, as you mentioned earlier, Pete. We have a program called AMP, Azure Accelerate Migration Program, so that you can take advantage of some funding that can actually pay for a vendor to help you build out a pilot environment. And it can also align with some of the partners like Nerdio or Citrix or VMware that it gives you evaluation versions for several months to be able to test their software in conjunction with Azure and WVD. So those are some of the ways that we can help. Sometimes for larger environments, the Microsoft account team can identify other vehicles to help get you successful on Azure.
Cool. So yeah, so audience, we'll definitely be following up with everybody who's attended today, and we're going to try to help you guys get access to some of these great programs. And the goal is simple. It's like, you shouldn't have to spend money to eval a product, and it's a great program. And I did personally, I helped implement one of the larger pilots last year, and the customers of their rollout. So I'm pretty excited about that. All right, so fun kind of conversation to end cap, and then I'll kind of close the session today. But in the question that I've been holding off on, it kind of plays into this conversation, I think. So we hear a lot of great functionality that's coming in WVD. So I think it's in everybody's mind, why do we need Citrix or why do we need a VMware on top of WVD? And someone asked, and I think it plays nicely into the conversation, is what tool is recommended to manage hundreds, if not thousands of VDI workloads? And I think that question plays into this conversation. So what are your thoughts there, Rob, as a Microsoft guy? Why Citrix? Let's just keep it simple for now.
Okay. Yeah. And the number of VMs plays less a part of it as what it is you're trying to deliver, right? First of all, Citrix, for example, has better scaling tools, so it can actually bring your Azure consumption down. So that's one right off the top of my head. One that usually stops us, in our tracks, that we really will engage the Citrix folks on is, hey, we're going to run VoIP in the session. Sorry, we don't do that today, right? You can run it. Will it work? Yes. If it's your primary workload and you're going to put it in a multi-user environment, it's just not going to do well, right? If we bring in Citrix, they have that audio video redirection out of band, and you're going to have a better experience. Other things like, I want to run it. I have Citrix on-prem, and I'm going to have Citrix cloud as well. And being able to have that single interface, right there. WVD doesn't have any knowledge about on-prem deployments. Other things, graphic workloads. They handle graphic better. Part of that's because they're already UDP based, and they can manipulate graphics today better. We're doing a great job. We do have the right workloads, the NVIDIA and AMD chipset. We can also bring in somebody we didn't mention is Teradici as well, where Teradici could be delivering over the top, to give you some of that, right? So there's probably at least a couple hundred reasons why you might, still want Citrix in your environment. In some cases, it's just a matter of, hey, if I can find the right workload, yes, you could probably run it natively.
Yeah. And I think to summarize, right? So to the person that asked the question, one of the things I like is, Citrix, if you're already a Citrix customer or you're already a VMware customer, essentially it becomes that single pane of glass to manage VDI on top of Citrix on premise or in the cloud. So it becomes the single pane of glass. But parallel to that, you're already used to the management paradigm of the models that you're already producing with the VMware or Citrix. Now, the cool thing is next week, I actually have Gabe Knuth on to talk about VMware and Horizon Cloud. So you definitely want to join that session if you haven't already signed up. So I'm excited about that. Now, the other thing too is, we kind of glaze over, but yeah, the protocols are tried and true. Not that RDP isn't, but Citrix and VMware have been at it a long time to, master VoIP and video and doing something even like this, like a Zoom inside of a VDI session. Now you guys have mastered Teams, which is expected, but hopefully, over time, if graphics and video are a big deal, that's where, again, Citrix and VMware are going to fit in. So,
and I can say some of the vendors have already jumped in, and they're starting to build with our API that we built, that we used for Teams, is now available for products like Zoom and Avaya and others, where they'll be able to do that out of band pieces. And some of them are already starting down that path. So it's just that today, Citrix and VMware, for example, they already have those pieces built. You'll probably never see one for Skype, right? Because that would be required for Microsoft to do. And we kind of want to send you a different way, probably, I guess.
Yeah.
Nudge you along down the Teams path. But I think one other thing to mention, I think, is what you said, Pete, about RDP is fully robust. But if you think about the protocol we use for WVD, it's a little bit different. It's based on RDP, but it has this reverse connect capability. And some of those things we have to work around. So it's a great thing from a security aspect, but it makes things like some of these audio video things that RDP can already do, WVD, we have to kind of figure our way around because of that reverse connect feature. And that's where that UDP direct connect is going to play a part.
Yeah. So Great questions. Again, if you have any other questions, please throw them into the Q&A dialogue. I love the getting questions because it spawns great conversation. But hey, Rob, anything else you wanted to show before we kind of end cap the session?
No, I think what I like to convey is that WVD is a brand new 20-year-old product, right? It's based on the architecture back in 1999. When we kind of introduced terminal service. So think about it, it's got a lot of historical capability, yet it's a brand new product, right? And we're happy to work with customers as you want to move forward. So XenTegra is always a great partner in helping you facilitate that, and it's also one of my go-to partners for anything WVD. So
Cool. And just a little shout out too. So a lot of folks said they were heavily Citrix, and Citrix has a great kind of, I'll call it a shim into WVD. It's Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service standard, for Azure, right? And what's great about that is it's essentially a Citrix built offering for Azure. And if they want to just have the management plane, they can have the management plane. That's just standard. If they want to have the management plane plus desktop as a service, that would be for Azure. And so Citrix has two offerings that plug nicely into the WVD stack. If you want to know more, definitely reach out. So really quickly, for those folks who have never attended any of our sessions, XenTegra, we're a great partner of not only Microsoft, but a lot of great vendors in the space: Citrix, VMware, Nutanix, Cisco, et cetera. And we founded the company on a core premise of enablement and being a true partner. Now, the big thing you'll learn is we don't focus on selling just product. We focus on building a solution. So if you come to me and say, "Hey, Pete, I'm looking at building WVD," I'm going to look at the whole picture and say, "Well, what else do you want to do? What endpoint do you want to use, et cetera?" And then we can bundle that with a service offering. And then on top of that, yes, we can sell you the product. So yes, we are a reseller at the core, but we're focused on building solutions for end user compute, digital workspaces, and cloud computing. But I really believe this, and Rob, I think you'd agree that without our end users, well, one, we want to all have jobs, and two, if they're not successful, then the project's not going to be successful. So, more often than not, if you walk down the halls of an enterprise and you ask a user, "Hey, do you like product X?" or they're probably not going to have a great answer a lot of the time. So I believe that we have to make our end users successful. And so that's kind of a core premise that I live by here at XenTegra. Again, I talked about this earlier. Head over to bronco.xentegra.com. Yes, we're giving away a Ford Bronco this year. We're going to try to align it to Microsoft Ignite, coincidentally. However, I'm just waiting for the dates and if it's actually going to happen in person. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, we'll figure it out. But there's a few ways you can qualify, but I want to name one way. You can go and get what's called a micro assessment from XenTegra. And XenTegra offers this up as a way to give you some anecdotes and some food for thought on the current state of your environment. So we come in, we do an assessment, and then we give you a nice, anecdote of an Excel spreadsheet, a presentation, et cetera, to say, here's what you need to consider. And part of that's going to be, hey, do you have a cloud strategy? So I encourage you to take advantage of one of these assessments, and you get a lot of great information out of them. Randy, who does them, is a smart guy. Rob knows him as well. Harvey's another good guy. I mean, we have great guys that come in and do them. So, again, some calls to action. If you're interested in digging into WVD, definitely let us know. We want to help you not only get into WVD, but not spend a lot of money doing it. So there's a lot of great programs you can take advantage of to, supplement the cost to help try before you buy. And then there's the program to help you migrate. And then we can also help you understand, hey, if you already have a Citrix investment, how does that play into this? If you already have a VMware investment, how does that play into this? If you have both, how does that play into this? If you have a Nutanix investment, how does that play into this? So again, definitely be on the lookout for any reach outs. So with that, any last thoughts, Rob, on your side before we say adieu to our first session of the year?
Yeah, I guess, happy to help, through XenTegra, anybody who wants to, take a look at WVD. either natively or through one of the tools that we have, and even be able to align you with those vendors if need be. Also, always great to see you, Pete, and work with you guys at XenTegra.
Likewise, Rob, and hey, always a pleasure to have you on. I want to have you on again in the future. Maybe we can spend a little time talking a little more about FS Logics. I know there's some cool stuff coming there as well, especially in the ARM front. So, maybe once we get a little closer, we can talk about that. I don't know if you're digging into MSI app attach, but I'd love to dig into that a little more. But there's a lot of cool topics here that we can definitely talk about in the near future. So, we'd love to have you back on.
Yeah,
So with that, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day. Hopefully you guys like this new time slot. We're going to try it out. You guys gave me feedback. I listened. And so 2:00 is the new time. It's not a mistake. And we talked about Microsoft and WVD today. So thank you for joining us. And I hope everybody has a great day and a great start to their new year. So thanks. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Again, I got Gabe Knuth from VMware joining me. So definitely want to join that session and learn more about that. With that, I'm going to say thank you. Have a great day and look forward to seeing y'all next week. And as I always say, see y'all on the flip side.